Welcome to the Career Wanderlust podcast, your compass for new career horizons. Today, we are talking with Alex Plant. Alex is an experienced marketing and communications leader with 20 plus years of experience. He started his career as a journalist before moving into corporate communications. He has worked with startups, helping them successfully scale, and he has supported the growth of billion-dollar corporations such as NetApp and Sun Microsystems. Alex excels at driving positive impact for any company he works with. And he is currently the head of marketing and communications for Standard AI, where he built the entire go to market function from the ground up. I'm really excited to learn more, Alex. Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thank you for having me. How exciting.
It,
It's so interesting to hear your own background said back to you.
it's a trip, isn't it?
It's a trip, you know, it's been a long time. And a lot of us that have been doing marketing and communications for decades now, which is really, really interesting. And I started to cut my teeth in like the dot-com boom, like the late 90s.
Mhm.
And then, in a lot of tech when the internet was just starting to kind of take off, and then the boom and the bust. And 2008 was another inflection point. And here we are. Like, it's been quite a journey. It's been
Hasn't it?
really, it has been, and I feel like it's been fun, it's been exhausting, it's been challenging, exhilarating, all the things.
Right. It is interesting, the ups and downs. It just it has this. I feel like the industry gets a little dip every 7 years or so. It was, 2000, 2001 to 2003 in there. It was 2008, 2009. There was a slight dip in 2016, not anything big. But man, this 2023 really uh, came in.
Well, 100%. It's so interesting, even just saying, I've been in this for 20 plus years, the pro is that you've been doing it for a long time and you've a
Mhm.
lot of experience, and I've seen it all. I mean, I could probably dish a lot of stories. It's that part has been really great. The flip side, someone may go, "Oh, well, you have an older mentality, or maybe you're not current." And I think for me, that's one thing I've always really wanted to make sure that I think about how to tell stories, drive awareness, drive demand in a modern construct,
Yes.
not just applying the tools of the past. And I've seen so many people, not just in marketing, just across the board, use like a playbook of the past.
Mhm.
They're not thinking in the contemporary terms, thinking like, okay, to whom am I speaking? Where are they? How do I touch them and engage them? How do we get them to think about what I have to offer and get them to drive to action? The tools that we used 20 years ago are quite different
Oh,
than
absolutely
what we
different.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
You always have to kind of think about that, like how to modernize yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep uplifting. I mean, we're all evolving, right? We just want to keep evolving and getting better. And my argument to that is it all depends on the person. I mean, sure, there are some people who have 20 plus years of experience who have stopped learning or have stopped expanding, have stopped looking out to see what is new and what's out there and growing their skill set. Yes, I'm sure there's a lot of people like that. But the people who have 20 plus years of experience who are out there consistently learning, consistently growing, always seeing what's out there, those are the people who are on fire. Those are the people that you want on your team.
Right. And it takes a lot of energy. It's a proactive game. You got to think about what are the tools? What are the levers? How can I keep myself current? But I think it's like the fun of the job. We tend to want to harken back to in the old days, X, Y, and Z, but the reality is that it's a different landscape. There were pros and cons of life back then,
Mhm,
years ago. I think the communications landscape has changed. It's much wider. It's much more open now.
mhm.
There's some more channels. You're storytelling in different ways. It's just a different model. But if you're trying to operate in that older construct, it's just not going to work
Right.
today. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not. Yeah. You have to keep advancing yourself. I mean, really, in every industry, I can't think of an industry that doesn't apply to at this point in time. So that's what we all need to be doing.
Yeah,
What can you learn? What did you do to learn today? That's the question.
right, right. And there's the functional area that in which you work, like how you do marketing or communications or
Mhm.
whatever. There's also the subject matter that as well.
Right.
I worked in tech for a long time. I remember 20 plus years ago, I worked at a PR firm and someone was like, "Hey, I've got a new account for you. It's a Linux. It's the enterprise." And I was just like, "What are you talking about? What? are those words? What is Linux? What is it? Enterprise? What does that mean? Like, Star Trek? What is going on here? And then at the time, it was like, I'm never going to get this. And then you over time understood it. And I've built a career doing predominantly B2B, like enterprise selling, enterprise storytelling. And for me, it's always been fun to try to make those stories sexy. How do you take
Right.
and make storage like an interesting, the use case of storage? And
How do you do that? I mean, is there a tactic that you use? What helps you do that?
well, I think you always think about there's the what is the technology itself. There's
Mhm,
like I'm storing data, let's just
mhm,
say, like storing and making sure that data is accessible and available. But there's also part two, it's how is it being used? So that's the
mm,
interesting part. I
mhm,
remember one time I was at a NetApp storage company and we were just looking for use cases. And we just happened to talk. I was at an event and I was talking to one of the sales folks and I was like, well, what do you have any interesting customers that you've been working on? And they're like, hey, we've been working with Stanford and we do a lot of, Stanford uses a lot of our data to support a lot of research and development in areas of like cancer and pancreatic cancer.
mm,
And they're like, I think they would love to talk to you. And so I went and talked to them and, we ended up creating this super really interesting, usable marketing campaign as a result of like their access to so much data has facilitated and accelerated their own ability to do their research and to make some progress and breakthroughs. And, they ended up using that asset themselves. Stanford, we used it at NetApp a ton. And, it was just so fulfilling and interesting. But if I take a step back, that's really about data storage.
right.
If
Yeah, no,
storage,
no, it's really interesting. As you were saying that, it made me realize, I mean, that's what the okay, this is gonna sound funny, but in my head, most successful commercial, the ones that I love, that's what they do. It's not really about the product, it's about the people who are using it or how they're using it or how it impacted their lives or what have you in some emotional
how
way.
it's being used. Exactly. Right.
Yes.
That is there's the what, and the what is interesting and fine. And there's a certain, if you're doing product marketing, you want to make sure that the what is very clear and that part is very understandable for your audience. But then part
Mhm,
two, it's okay. So what is the impact? How is it? How is this technology being used? What makes it different?
right.
That's another thing I think a lot of times
Mhm,
people tend not to really want to lean into. It's okay, what makes it first, only, or best? That's why I always like to kind of go back to. It's like,
mhm,
is this a first of it? What is uniquely only about it? And what makes it better?
mhm,
There's always going to be some nugget in there that
right.
you're going to be able to find.
Asking
And
the right questions, huh?
yeah, and keeping going.
Mhm,
And that's the thing, like, when you don't have enough information, just ask the questions. Keep that going, that level
mhm.
of
Love it.
curiosity is like, that's where and then all of a sudden the aha moment happens and you're like, "This is great."
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I bet you find all kinds of nuggets that way.
I
So,
I
I
I
mean
love, especially if you're in this kind of high tech enterprise selling, B2B, like, you kinda have to, right? Especially if you're gonna up level your target away from being just to the tech sector. If you're
right.
trying to tell a more mainstream audience, so you're trying to tap into like a business audience and kind of the industry at large. Like I have a ex-colleague and she's doing great work at CrowdStrike and I was noticed they did a Super Bowl commercial.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and it was just so cool. I worked with her before and she's so interesting and forward looking. And then to see the fruit of like cybersecurity being on the front end stage and the biggest stage in the world. I think that Super Bowl was the most watched TV program ever.
Crazy. Yeah,
And
and it's
like,
the cybersecurity's up there with all the trucks and whatnot.
it's, like that is and they made it like they had a really cool, like old Wild West kind of theme, like kind of with a Westworld kind of vibe with it, all telling a cybersecurity story.
Great.
And everyone that was at the Super Bowl party with was like, "Oh, that's a really cool." And I was like, "Do you know that's a cybersecurity company?" Like, they're like, "Oh, that's so neat." That's what I love.
That's good
Not
storytelling, yes.
great storytelling.
Yeah,
And it really could only come from being creative and digging into the impact. Like that makes it really, really interesting.
definitely. I feel like you can just take that advice and apply it to a lot of things in life personally.
Right?
So,
Right.
yeah,
That's
yes.
a good way to that's
Yeah.
right.
So, I mean, okay, we've talked about your expansive career. I mean, you've done a lot of different things. I am curious because, like you said, you have a lot of stories to share. So, what do you feel has been some of the more important career advice that you've received, and why do you feel that way?
So good question. So, I started off as like a writer. I never thought I would even come to the dark side of corporate communications. And then I found my way and I found a love for it. And then over time, it evolved into like marketing. And for me, when I was doing more pure communications, the one thing that I always felt I could be stronger at is learning how communications and the awareness piece and all the stuff ties into like the marketing engine, the revenue engine, those dots, like connecting the dots. So, I kind of went out of a comfort zone and took more of a corporate marketing role. And now I
Mhm.
run all of marketing for my current company. So, I had never previously, before these roles, done product marketing. I'd never really
Mhm.
done like pure lead generation. I'd never done some of these other facets of marketing. And it was a little stressful
I was gonna ask, you felt nervous
yeah,
rolling into this new role? Yeah. We all get that little imposter syndrome. What'd you do? How'd you deal with it?
yeah, right. Well, at first you're like, am I going to be able to get this? But then you start, it's really just about like taking the process and boiling it down. At my current company, I was the first hire, the first marketing hire.
It's a
So I
big
got to
deal.
build it from the ground up. There's no
Yeah.
CRM. We had like some Google Sheets that had some
Yeah,
information,
no.
leads,
That's all.
pipeline, but
You're making
we had a cool story. So what I had to they really think about is laser focus on prioritization. So I was a team of one. I had some contractors externally that helped me and they were great, but I couldn't scale to do everything.
right.
So my part of the advice is like, you know, look a couple of years out to go, what does your own program look like? What am I doing now? What am I not doing? And it may sound like a kind of pedantic thing to say, but a lot of people will come to you and say, "Oh, let's do X, Y, and Z." And you have to be like, for our program right now, we're awareness building, and that is where I'm at. That's the phase that I'm at right now. We're moving towards a fundraise. That's where we're at part two. What I'm not going to do is X, Y, and Z yet. I'm not going to build the CRM yet. That will come stage three.
Mhm.
So I think just having a plan enabled me to really take a problem that maybe seemed kind of large and unwieldy and thinking, how can I segment it? And then it becomes very easy at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that clarity, right? We were having a discussion earlier about this a little bit about clarity and what a magic that is, how that transcends. And so, like you're saying, in your company, you need to know what your goals are, what you need to accomplish, what are the priorities. And once you do, then you can work backwards and see where you need to be, what you need to be doing, and not get distracted by the other things that come along, which we so easily do when we're not very clear on what needs to happen.
100%. And when you are, at a certain level, you need to set expectations as well, right? Because you bring your team along with the to say, okay, our goals as an organization are X. And to get that, here's how this function will contribute. And so here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're not going to do. So don't come to me for X, Y, and Z just yet. Or just, I want you to understand here's why this team, which is resource constrained, we're small, like how we're going to kill it in this one bucket. But if you bring the expectation, what you don't want is there be different expectations so that a year down the
Mhm.
line, we're like, why haven't you done X, Y, and
Mhm.
Z? And you said, well, it was always part of the plan to not do those things. So you have a bit of internal brand building and communicating that you have to do as well,
Oh, yeah.
stakeholder relationships that you've got to bring people along with,
Mhm.
or it's going to cause a lot of conflict, confusion.
Oh, yeah. Managing expectations is really big. I love this piece of advice here too, because that makes all the difference in the world when people are prepared to what to expect. Is there any advice that you give around managing expectations? How do you do that successfully, would you say?
Well, I would say the one facet which is super interesting now in this remote world, I would say is the expectation setting, like the planning, checking in on a plan, like how are you tracking to plan, like s- socializing that is really important. In the
Mm,
olden days when we all worked in an office, you could just walk over and you could have a conversation with someone. And
mhm,
not to say that you can't do that, but those organic moments that you really don't get online a bit. I mean, you're trying to recreate those on Slack or maybe a quick phone call, but in this remote world, I think the over communicating is really
mhm,
important.
mhm.
The sharing of like progress towards your goal is really
Mhm.
important
Oh,
to
I
go,
agree.
hey, we went to this event and sometimes our like kind of on our leadership Slack, I'll just say, hey, we went to the event and hey, these are the learnings. X, we had a success here. Here's things where we could have done better. Like just like those iterative updates, even in a less formal way,
Mhm.
Allow you've set the expectation. There's not consternation of, oh, how's it going? Like you have to try a little bit harder in a remote environment. You're not going back on Monday morning. Someone's like, hey, how was the event, Jolie? And you're like, oh, it was great. We ended up talking to this kind of an audience, but this message we find that didn't really work that well. You have to find a way to recreate that magic in a remote world for a lot of people.
Mhm. Right. You're right. You do need to overshare. In this type of situation, it needs to be consistent because it is so easy for things to get lost, not only in the pile of messages and whatnot, but the message to get lost amongst things if it's not being very clear and consistent over time. So
But
I
if you
think that's
that, then what's the option? The alternative is that people don't know what's going or is anything going on? Like how is it going? When you don't know, that can cause a lot of like friction as well.
right.
But
It
like
does.
sometimes I love when my team, they're like just little iterative updates, right? Just like, hey, you know what? Like I learned this or I was reading this article. Do you think we could do X, Y, and Z? That can happen on a Slack or a message
Mhm.
or that can definitely happen, but you have to try a little bit harder.
Mhm. Yeah, even when you don't have an update, but you give them that update, you're just checking in like, "Hey, you know what? I just wanted to know I don't have any more information, but I just wanna let you know that so you're not waiting." That that just feels
Set
good
up
to the other person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it kinda shows that you care. One thing that I have always tried to look for a product or a message where or an environment where I can really, like, believe in it. Like, I remember the first time I worked it's called Standard AI is our company, and we put AI-powered cameras into a physical environment. So, it's like AI-powered
Okay.
software. The first industry that we tackled years ago, I've been there for 4 years, is retail. So, it's like an
Uh-huh.
Amazon Go, like, shopping experience using only cameras.
Okay, so, like, when you say Amazon Go, so it's like walking into the store, picking up what you want, and walking out,
That's it,
and that's
and
it.
ours uses no sensors.
Fascinating.
It is really wild, and you know what? One thing that I remember, we had a store in San Francisco, and before I joined the company, I was just so fascinated by the possibilities of not just the checkout free shopping experience, but what
Mhm.
can happen when you transform what's possible in the physical world, giving it like an e-commerce like property, like digital magic,
Yeah.
bringing that to a physical room, and you're tracking how people are interacting with products or things in the room. So I went to the store, and I brought my kids and, we downloaded the app and we walked in and we walked out and we got the receipt and it was that like aha moment. It was
Uh-huh.
the, how did it know? My kids before were a little younger and they were like, "Oh, dad, I don't wanna go to this convenience store." And I was like, "Well, just download the app. Let's go through this experience. I wanna get your unadulterated feedback."
Yeah.
And when they got the receipt, their eyes just like lit up and it was just this magical
Amazing.
moment. And I just thought, that's the kind of like product impact that you wanna strive for.
Oh, yeah. No, that's
So it's so
fascinating company that you're
it
working
really
for.
is. And then like the tip of the iceberg is this autonomous checkout experience. You can use this kind of technology in so many different facets and ways in a retail environment, in different retail environments, but in the future, maybe manufacturing or a parking lot. I love those kind of stories and I've
Super
always
interesting.
believed in it.
Mhm.
Right? I've always the
Yeah.
kind like when you're at home and maybe it's the weekend and you catch yourself kind of thinking about your product that you're selling
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
lot, that would be amazing. Your kids are always, giving me ideas when
Yeah.
we're driving around at
Oh, I
stores
bet they give you some interesting ideas, huh?
all the time. Well,
Yes.
and also, why doesn't it do this? Or they're always like, technology, or why are we waiting in line?
Yeah. They are. They are
I
the
love
future.
that.
And AI is the future. It's gotta be interesting working in an AI company at this point in time where, it is just blowing up and all the things are happening. I'm curious, what are your opinions on the technology itself and people getting involved with the use of the various uses of AI right now?
Well, I think um, from a the people that are selling and marketing AI now, the good thing is that it's topic du jour. Like it is the thing. It has been for a year now. The flip side is that, I think the market it's very saturated. There's a ton of noise around AI now, and it's where the conversation is. But I think like I was at an event, a couple events this year already, and I'm asking all of our retailers and all the people that we work with, are you feeling like you need to like integrate AI? Like, what are you feeling as
Mhm.
an organization? And every response was yes, our management and our team is like really tasking us with thinking about how we're going to use AI in a practical, real world way.
Mhm.
They're like, but I don't know how to do that yet. I'm looking for that help.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's a noisy landscape. I think rising above, there are probably some clear tools, like what OpenAI is doing is crazy and so cool. Anthropic, there's so many really interesting AI companies,
Mhm.
but it's really noisy. And now, so you have to, I think, as a brand, differentiate what your AI, is and what it can do, what makes it different in a really noisy landscape.
Mhm.
My personal view is that I have really seen the power of what these AI models can do. The learning, the predictive analytics, the predictive experiences, like really profound. I do think we need to be an ethical application of it. I think we need to
Very
be
yes. Mhm.
cognizant of it getting away from us. Always more like when I hear leaders that are talking about more the sovereign AI or the ethical AI, like that gives me solace that these people are having this conversation. We
Yeah.
don't do facial recognition or anything like that here. So that was a big moment. That was a big choice that we made early on,
Mhm.
that our AI it almost puts like an animated stick figure
Mhm.
independent of anyone's face.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a noisy, but it's the chance for it to have such a positive impact is so significant these days. So, to just improve the way that we do things, that we live, like, that's really important. However, I do think, we need to be cautious a bit about how it's
I agree.
implemented.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I was curious if you have thoughts on how it's gonna be impacting the comms industry and if, PR comms marketing people should be looking at anything in this realm for themselves.
Well, I think that you'd be remiss not to have already been thinking about using AI tools. Either to like write content. Sometimes I'll use a chatbot to like riff with. The other day, maybe not the other, maybe 6 months ago, I was doing some product naming. And then I just was like going back and forth with the bot around, give me some names. What do you think about this? I need to incorporate these properties. And we were going back and forth. I'm in a remote world. I'm in a room by myself. And actually through the fruit of this like half an hour dialogue I had with this bot, we came up with some really interesting names that we ended up using. Uh,
Fantastic.
so I do think like there's some really interesting ways that it can help you expedite and accelerate things that you do. I do think on the content development side, teaching the bot to understand your voice, like your brand voice is really important because
That's interesting.
can have it write content for me, but often it's so sterile and cold when I get
Mhm.
it back. But what I've been doing more is kind of teaching it to speak in our brand voice
Yes.
so that what I get back is a little closer. What I'd love to do is give it some properties, some key messages, and play more of an editor role.
Mhm.
But in this world where you need to develop so much content, it's all about like content all the time, social, blogs, media, like just being in the public dialogue requires content. These tools are super valuable. You
Yes.
just have to figure out which one works for you and how you work with the bot and the tool because it can be really helpful.
Oh, yeah. No, there's so many interesting things out there. I'm curious, and what about a personal story? Because I'm sure you have a lot of impactful stories that have happened throughout the years. What's something that happened to you that you learned a great deal from and that could actually benefit other people to hear the story?
It's a great question. I was thinking a couple things. So one is at standard. One thing that I started to really dig into our story, and we talked about like try to modernize how we market and
Mhm.
how we sell. I did some experimentation with influencers, which influencer videos and some campaigns. They were super successful. They were so interesting, and I felt like on a lot of colleagues that I have worked with, we ended up taking these YouTubers to one of our convenience stores, and they did a whole thing on our shopping experience in this fun and irreverent way. And I remember talking to a lot of colleagues that I have, like my own colleagues, and they've never done anything like that.
Mhm.
And so
Ve
I think one thing is to think about how are you leveraging these modern tools.
Mhm.
And so there's that. I think I'm more like profound story is I worked at Outcast and it was one of the best experiences of my career, I have to say.
Okay, why? I'm just curious.
We first off, we worked on really killer accounts. The team there was smart. Everyone is driven. Everyone's fired up. I was there for like
Everything
4
about the
years.
culture.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I think we were very judicious with the companies that we took. We really needed to see something in them that we felt like we could really
I
work
like
with.
that. You picked the ones you wanted to be working with.
Yes,
Yeah.
that changed everything. It didn't feel like there were things you like had to work on. It was the team asking you, "Is this something you want to work on?"
That's
Like
great.
that was really cool. I remember a company called New Relic came across our desk. I'd heard of them. It's application performance monitoring. And I remember some of the people were like, "What is that? Is that really going to be sexy? Is that going to be interesting and fun?" And but one of the partners and I were like, "No, I think like let's go meet with them. Let's talk to them." The team at New Relic was so progressive and creative, fun, and the CEO was great. And what the learning was, we could have easily have seen the application performance monitoring and just kind of been like, fluffed it off. It helps you monitor the performance of your apps.
Yeah.
But the people that we got to work with, the creative storytelling,
Mhm.
all of the brand building that we did was like so irreverent. It was so fun. And we ended up finding this cool use case with the Obamacare. It had just launched at that
Oh,
time. And then the site went down. And I remember it was Thanksgiving. I was with my family. We were in Oregon. We were driving back. And all of a sudden, the CEO of the company was like, we have an opportunity because we're going to be brought in to help save Obamacare website, essentially.
jeez. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like driving back on the five, like trying to
So
like
cool.
manage all this. But we got some of the best coverage and we able to leverage that customer use case for like years to come. And
That's
it
amazing.
was neat. And my long-winded way of saying, I think it would have been easy for us to be short-sighted and to not
Mhm.
look at that technology as being like something you could really work with. But it was really about the people and how we were going to be empowered to storytell that really made the difference. And I love
Mhm.
it. I look back and that's one of my favorite experiences I've ever had.
I love it. Just
Yeah.
opening yourself up to the new things and not shutting the door before you check the things out and using your curiosity. I love
Yes.
it. Yes.
And
Yeah.
you were talking earlier before this podcast started, being very clear about asking yourself, what is it that, I want to get out of this endeavor, out of this experience? And that's something that I think in your work environment, like asking yourself, and then outside as you progress in your career, what are you optimizing for? What is your
Right.
plan? What do you want right now? And it changes as you kind of get older a bit. It would be nice if we had one linear plan we all just work from.
But it doesn't. We have to keep asking ourselves those questions over and over again,
Yes.
consistently.
I think that like many people do not do that. That's
Mm-mm.
it's in me. And I don't know if we're so busy living life in family and friends and working and in the haste of all of that, we're not taking the moment to go because it's so valuable. Because if you're
Oh, it's
really
so valuable. I agree. I think the majority of people are reacting. They're reacting to the world in
yes,
front of them. They're reacting to the things that are coming at them, and they're not spending the time proactively creating what it is that they want to have in their life. And that is the pivotal moment when things change, is when you start proactively creating, thinking about what you want, getting clear on that, and writing it down. I mean, really getting clear, writing it down, and then all of a sudden it just seems like things start to align, and it all seems to work. And that's why a great business plan works really well. Like you said, when you're clear on your business goals, you write this down, it works for you. And you can do that with your life as well.
yeah. And it's okay if those things change. I think like me a
Totally.
long time ago, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to take time to write this down. Like, no, like I really wish I had written more things down and I was, younger and I had, thought about this, my own, like at work, I was always pretty good about planning, but in our own personal progression,
Mhm.
like writing things down. And I've been doing more of that, like as a family, as an individual. What are we trying to achieve for the next few years as a family and as an individual? Like,
That's great. That's
yeah,
really powerful. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've always resisted writing things down. I've always been told, I mean, people always tell you to write things down. I'm like,
totally,
oh, it's fine. It's in my head. It's in my
totally,
head.
totally.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't need to write
Good.
it
Well,
down.
when it's like, just like throw it away. No, it's so true.
It's very powerful though when you write it down. I don't know what it is, but it is like bringing magic into the world. And I now I'm like, I tell everyone you should write it down. And even when I find myself resisting, still again, sometimes, I'm like, no, no, you're fine. As soon
No,
as I
it's
do write it down, that's when the things
really starts to happen, right? Because
yeah.
like tangible and real. And that's a good comparison. Like for the next few years, here's what we're going to be focusing on. Like we as a family are like, we want to go to Europe this summer. So,
Mhm.
okay, cool. Well, that's great.
Love it.
That is
Yes.
a goal we have. So to make that happen, here are the things. First, I've got to find the right timing and all the camps and all the
Yep.
things that have to go on and all of that. And then setting ourselves up to be able to take that trip. We've been trying to even involve the kids a bit in that notion of planning. Like, hey, we want to go in July for this number of days to here to do these things. We found a window, and to get that, we have to make these things happen. It also means that for spring break, we're not going to go and do something huge. We're going to
Exactly.
spend maybe those resources and that effort a little bit. What we're gonna do less on a spring break
Exactly.
at the behest of this. So it's cool for the kids because they're like, okay, cool. I kind of understand the game plan
Mhm.
and the expectation
The
setting that
expectation setting. It all comes full circle, doesn't it?
right. It's totally.
Yeah.
They all ask me, "Can I have this? Can I have this?" They still do that, but
Yeah. Oh, I agree. That's great. And on the proactive front, I really believe in proactively feeding your mind because we're getting fed all kinds of
totally.
not so great things in a consistent basis. So what do you do? Is there anything that you read or watch or listen to that has had a positive impact on you that others could benefit from as well?
Oh man, I wish I could say that I read as much as I used to. I just it's really like
Even if
sad,
it's
like,
yeah. No, 'cause some
you
people
know?
don't have time to read. I mean, we're consuming in so many different ways, and some
Yeah.
people are just, they're listening to podcasts or they're
And
watching
I'm more
TV
of
shows.
like podcast, and I'm a big like newsletter person. The storytelling in this new way, which I really like, it feels more like less is more. It feels
Mm,
like a
it
lot of
can.
the consumption that I get in terms of not reading long prose and 1,000 word text. It's like it's really like these ideas. And for me, like where I'm at now is very busy life. Like I've got a set bit of some newsletters that I read every day, like the Wall Street Journal, like the top 10, the Axios. There's a few Axios ones that I really
Mhm.
like. Uh, Dan Primack, like always, I've always read Dan Primack every single day. And there's the tech ones, the business ones, but I've been also trying to look for more creative storytelling now, like different versions of HBR. Like there's like a really cool newsletter for Harvard Business Review.
Mhm.
So like trying to expand myself a bit.
Yeah.
I really wish I had more time to read. That's like being super real right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, and that a lot of people can relate to that. That's why I always ask you to listen. Why? I mean, because we're all consuming it in different ways. But those were great examples of different newsletters. Because a lot of times when you don't have time to read, the newsletters that come through your email are great. They give you a little bit of information. They feed your mind in a different way. That's the second time actually someone's mentioned the Harvard Business Review as well. So,
Also, one thing that is neat about this particular job, that standard, that I think is always something that is advantageous. We have a set industry. So in addition to all of the retail industry, and before I
mhm,
came here, I had really never worked in the retail space at all. At first, part of me was like, "Oh, I'm a shopper. How hard could it be?" But there's a nuance to it, and it's taking me years to learn the vernacular, to
mhm,
learn about the pain points, the opportunities, to learn about like all of the things about retail. So, in addition to the business newsletters, I also have a series of retail podcasts that I
okay,
also listen to as well. And as a
smart,
marketer, what's
smart.
super very powerful for me is I can speak the language of the my target audience,
Yeah.
you know. But when I first started to market this brand 4 years ago, we used to sell on the basis of like transformation. You're transforming what's possible in a store. We're reaching new shoppers, and that was the retail landscape 4
Mhm.
years ago. But fast forward to today, the last 2 years, retailers have not had extraneous money
No.
to do a full store transformation in a lot of ways. So we've pivoted our products, but they are dealing with inflation and theft and out of stocks, and there's other challenges that they're faced with. I've been watching these trends unfold over week after week, and that is informed how I market, recommendations I'm making for different products that we sell as well. But I'm like in it. And when I go to conferences and shows, I love it because I feel like there's no more imposter syndrome. Like none of it. Like I
Yeah,
feel like
it's
I'm in it, and then I can speak their language and hold my own, and it's really empowering. It's great.
That's fantastic. That's really good advice too for people, especially people in the industry. If they're working for agencies and working with a lot of different companies, and
Oh, yes.
they get a company that's an industry they haven't been in, or they got to go to the podcast and listen to different podcasts within. It's really good advice.
Yeah,
Very actionable.
and make a recommendation to either your client or the team, and don't be afraid to make a recommendation. Hey, there's a new podcast I discovered. Our client would be good for this podcast. Or there's an idea that was shared. They were talking all about this new issue, this new pain. Let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Just even flagging those kind of things, it just shows that you're a part of this conversation. Like you care, you're bringing new ideas. It shows that you're more invested into
Hmm.
what you're selling and marketing.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, makes a difference. Yeah.
yeah,
Alex, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you.
really,
Before you go, I'd love to ask just one final question.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What is your personal superpower and how has it helped you?
Good question. Um, well, I was on the Wheel of Fortune one time, and
Were
so
you? Oh, that's exciting.
I would take
I
my
always want to be on Wheel of Fortune
well, I can do that. I can actually look at the puzzles and with very few letters, just like the words pop out.
and get it.
I don't know what that is, but it's always been. I won the teen week on Wheel of Fortune once,
Did
and
you?
yeah.
What did you win?
Oh, I won some really cool prizes. I won a bunch of money, won like $25,000 and a trip to Italy, Italy for
Fantastic.
4.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I won a trip to San Diego and Italy. I was 16 at the time.
That's
I
so cool.
I would have won a pink geo tracker. There's like square cars, but I didn't
Huh.
get the puzzle on one of the things right, which is okay. Like that
Yeah.
was
I think you made it out pretty well. Yeah.
my other more like work oriented or other superpower is, always creating a very safe space for people to open up to me. And I feel like that has always been really good about developing relationships for people. Like
Mhm.
people tend to dish to me and tell me a lot of things. I love it. I love that I'm creating a safe enough environment where people can come to me as for help and for ideas and no judgment. Like that to me is like what I've always wanted to strive to do.
Oh, I love that. That's an absolute superpower. Not only because when you create that safe space for people and allows them to share their story with you, I mean, not only do you gain value actually just by learning other people's stories and that empathetic nature, it provides a lot of value to you, but you're giving such this positive impact to each person who you allow to share their story in a safe space. I mean, it's just a gift.
And I'm hoping
And
trust is created as well,
right.
that like and it's two-way street, and that trust can transcend like trust in the workplace is so important. Like just being able to feel like you can communicate and trust the people that you're on this journey with, that you're all charging the hill together. That is so powerful, and it makes like this kind of shared journey that you're on. Like when you can trust those people around you, like to be who you are, like there's nothing better.
Oh, there really isn't. I mean, that's how you get the best teams to work with, the best clients to work with. I mean, that's how the relationships are all cohesive and running well. That makes a happy life. Really, when you start to break it down.
And there's times when you are laughing at work, times when you're
Yeah,
getting stuff done, like, all of you, like, bringing it all to the workplace that's when you do your best work.
it is. It is. No, it's fantastic. Alex, thank you so much for sharing your story with us here. I appreciate you joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
It was so fun. Thanks for having me. That was awesome.
Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. If you find value in learning from others, give us a like and subscribe. If you're looking to grow your communications, marketing, public relations, or sales and biz dev team with the best talent and quickly, check us out at paradigmstaffing.com and submit a request. We are wishing you a most successful and fulfilling career. Until next time.